Welcome everyone to this evening program coming from the Empty Cloud Monastery. I am Ayyā Sobhana. I've arrived here about a week ago and staying through the Vasa, if not longer, maybe longer. Today is the evening before the Asala Puja Day, which is one of the most honored special moon days in the traditional Theravada Buddhist calendar. On that full moon day tomorrow, we recollect when the Buddha taught the Dhamma Teachings to his first disciples. And that marks the creation of the Sangha and the initiation of the Dhamma. Tonight's sutta is the Saccavibhaṅgasutta, number 141 in the Middle Length Discourses. That will be a commentary on the Dhamma Saccavibhaṅgasutta. So with that, we can begin by paying respects to the Triple Gem. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang saranang gacchami. So we're considering the Saccavibhaṅgasutta, the analysis of truth. And in a few places, we will also look at the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, which is number 22 in the Digha Nikaya. I'm just going to go right into it. Please leave your comments as you go, and I'll pause from time to time and respond to any comments or questions that come along. And I guess I should also welcome who's here so far. Welcome Sean, welcome Gregory, welcome Bhumika, and welcome Yankee Apple. And welcome to all those who are in the room tonight. So I've heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Varanasi in the deer park at Isipatana. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied. And the Buddha said this. So Varanasi at the deer park at Isipatana is the very same place where the Buddha had given the teaching of the Dhamma Saccavibhaṅgasutta. He stayed for a period of time with his disciples, not just one sermon, but teaching them over a period of days. Each day, 2 or 3 of the disciples would go out to collect alms, and he would teach the others who remained back. And then when they came back, they would share the alms food among the entire group. So it's even possible that over that extra days of teaching, that these details that are recollected here were taught directly by the Buddha. He said, monks, the unsurpassed wheel of Dhamma that cannot be stopped by a contemplative, a priest, an angel, a demon, a god, or by anyone in the world, was set in motion by the Worthy One, the rightly self-awakened one at Varanasi in Deer Park at Isipatana. Sutta says that it cannot be stopped by any samana or any priest. The samana would be the local contemplative seekers who were practitioners of meditation and who were the original people in that area of India. And the priests were the Brahmins. They had originated in Kosala, which was somewhat to the west of the Magadha area where the Buddha taught. The Brahmins were specialists in the Vedas, and in the earliest period, their practice was very much focused on rituals. But some Brahmin priests were sent to Kosala, I guess suppose as missionaries. But what happened was there came to be a very rich merger and a blending of thoughts and ideas, so that a new philosophy came to emerge from this group of Brahmins in the Magadha area. There was interacting with the Samana groups and also interacting with the Buddha and with Buddhism. So it's out of that rich mixture that Hinduism, as we know it in the Vedanta, emerged. I'm out of respect for Empty Cloud Monastery, I'm using Bhante Sudasa's translation here. He mentions an angel, a demon, a god. The Deva are the gods who are still in the realm, or the supernatural beings who are still in the realm of the sense desire. So that includes earthbound devas, devas who live in trees, devas who live in the heaven of the 33, many different levels of devas, but they are still within this realm of sense desire. Those who came to be disciples of the Buddha listened to the Dhamma and discussed the Dhamma and thought about the Dhamma. And the Buddha sometimes taught them directly. Sometimes they asked questions from the Buddha. And then those who were not disciples of the Buddha just enjoyed the pleasure of being a god, being an angel, and living in a heavenly realm. Then the Brahma realm was a higher realm than that. And the Brahmas who were, it's translated here as a god. I forgot to mention the demons. The Mara, Mara is the position of the evil one, who is still in the sense realm. So he's one of the powerful beings there. And the god, or the Brahma, is the one who dwells in the realm of pure love, pure kindness, and who those who became disciples of the Buddha were the ones who encouraged the teaching and supported the teaching. Even the reason why the Buddha was giving this sermon here at the Deer Park was because the Brahma Sahampati had invited and begged him to please teach the Dhamma, and that there would be those who would be able to hear and could understand. So I But none of these beings, and not anyone in the world, is able to stop what the Buddha is launching, what he launched when he set the wheel of Dhamma in motion. That is, declaring, teaching, disclosing, describing, revealing, and clarifying the Four Noble Truths. This is what the teacher does. These are close synonyms, but what we're trying to get to is the Buddha doesn't cause the disciple to become enlightened by giving them a magic look, a magic touch, or a magic spell, or anything like that. The way he can bring about the insight, the breakthrough to insight, the breakthrough to enlightenment, is by this teaching, by pointing out. Listening to teaching is said to be one of the primary conditions for awakening. So if you would like to be enlightened, I recommend that you would show up for Dhamma talks and Dhamma teachings, and in lieu of teachings, open a book and read the words of the Buddha. What for? Declaring, teaching, disclosing, arising, and clarifying the noble truth of dissatisfaction. This is dukkha. Dukkha can be the most grave, terrible, nearly a crippling extremity of pain. Or it can also be a psychological pattern of dissatisfaction, discontent, even if the external circumstances are not particularly bad. A person can still be continuously unsatisfied, continuously not content with reality the way it is, continuously trying to make it different. And that subtle dissatisfaction is also a part of dukkha. So dukkha ranges from the severe to the subtle. Declaring, teaching, disclosing, describing, revealing, clarifying the truth of the origin of dissatisfaction or dukkha. This is all going to be explained in due time. Declaring, teaching, disclosing, describing, revealing, and clarifying the noble truth of the cessation of dissatisfaction. Declaring, teaching, disclosing, describing, revealing, clarifying the noble truth of the practice which leads to the cessation of dissatisfaction. So those are the four truths. It's hard for those who have been Buddhists for a long time. It may be hard to remember what an amazing miracle it might have been the first time you came to understand this teaching a little bit, even a little bit, and how transformative it was. I'm going to tell a story that's a very simplistic story about how a student that I met came to understand the Four Noble Truths. She was a pharmacist, but she came to be using prescription drugs that she would forge a prescription for herself, and was stealing drugs from the drugstore through this addiction. Then came to be caught in what she was doing. Eventually she lost her license, she lost her job, she lost her livelihood, she lost her house, and she lost custody of her child. Then she got into a 12-step recovery program to overcome her addiction. And while she was there, she was continuously beset by jealousy, noticing that the other people in the room didn't have to lose everything. They had just only suffered a little bit. Well, she suffered a lot. And she just was thinking it was like so unfair. So this was her dukkha. But she continued to work the program and eventually got to the part where you take prayer and meditation, and found her way to a Vipassana meditation group and began meditating. And while she was meditating, at some kind of level, she was trying to understand her own suffering. And the miracle happened one evening when she was going to her 12-step meeting, and filled with resentment as usual. But then she had an idea that the resentment was optional, that she could leave it at the door, and she didn't have to resent anybody. And then that was seeing the cause of the dukkha and the resentment, and letting go of that cause of dukkha. It wasn't the total all of dukkha in her life, but just that part of dukkha was let go. And she experienced a tremendous uplifting of joy and gratitude and thankfulness, attributing this to her meditation that she learned at the Vipassana group. And having experienced the release from that much dukkha, she became triply motivated and dedicated to learning more about this Vipassana meditation and learning about the Eightfold Noble Path, because she saw that this system works. It's possible to come out of dukkha completely and put it behind you in such a way that it's not coming back. That lady, when she told me her life story, she didn't actually realize that she was giving me a good teaching story about the Four Noble Truths, because she hadn't quite conceptualized it in that way. But I feel that that's a good simple example in real terms about what the entry level of the Four Noble Truths is. And now this is a reprise of what was given before. Monks, the unsurpassed wheel of Dhamma that cannot be stopped by any contemplative priest, angel, demon, god, anyone in the world, was set in motion by the worthy one, the rightly self-awakened one, at Varanasi and Isipatana. That is, the declaring, teaching, disclosing, revealing, expounding, and clarifying of these Four Noble Truths. This is quite an unusual sutta. The Buddha himself is telling his own history. And for that reason, some scholars think that this sutta is especially valuable in just setting up the record. We'll see that this sutta gives a very complete description of the Four Noble Truths. Then the Buddha changes the topic. He said, monks, associate with Sariputta and Moggallana. Monks, spend time with Sariputta and Moggallana. They are wise monks who assist their companions in the holy life. These two became the two main teaching disciples of the Buddha. If you see on the altar, if you see a Buddha with the two male disciples side by side, that's Sariputta and Moggallana. he said, Sariputta is like a parent. Moggallana is like a babysitter. Monks, Sariputta leads one to the attainment of stream entry. Moggallana leads one to the highest goal. It could be compared to the Buddha's Gautama's own birth mother who gave birth, and then his stepmother Mahapajapati who raised him. I think she was a little bit more than a babysitter, but the one who raised him. It's said that Sariputta, in addition to having his wonderful memory and being able to keep an exact recollection of each sutta that he heard from the Buddha, also was well known as being very compassionate and helping the monks. So it's said that when the monks went out on the alms round, Sariputta would stay back and sweep and tidy and make the beds so that the monastery would be neat and clean. And it's said that when he went out on a tudong together with the monks, he didn't go at the front of the line just behind the Buddha or closely behind the Buddha, but instead he stayed back to take care of the little ones and those who were ill and infirm, and making sure that they were all taken care of, so that he would sometimes even be late for the teachings because he'd been helping so much. So in a way, you could say that Sariputta was a very motherly kind of a bhikkhu. He was so patient. He would teach them until they reached stream entry, and then he would let them practice on their own so that he could then take a new batch of newcomers in. So that was his specialty, was taking the freshman class or the incoming disciples and leading them up to stream entry. But he was so patient, he would, in some case, he gave more than 1,000 Dhamma talks to a disciple who was a slow learner. So he wouldn't let them go. He wouldn't let them go until they had obtained their stream entry. He just would stay with them as long as it took, and he would do as much as it took to take them. So in that way, and then Moggallana is famous for taking his own disciples and whoever came to him and staying with them until they became a fully enlightened arahant. Moggallana is also very well known for having psychic powers, and he didn't misuse them for power, but only when it was something that could be helpful for the teaching. Okay, and now the Buddha said, monks, Sariputta is able to declare, teach, disclose, describe, reveal, expound, and clarify these Four Noble Truths. This is what the Blessed One said. After saying this, he rose from his seat and entered his dwelling. Now Sariputta takes the hint. Not long after the Blessed One left, Venerable Sariputta addressed the monks. Venerable monks, Venerable Sir, those monks replied, and Venerable said this. Now he's repeating the same refrain that we've just heard. The unsurpassed will of Dhamma cannot be stopped by a contemplative priest, angel, demon, god, or by anyone in the world. It was set in motion by the Worthy One, the rightly self-awakened one at Varanasi and Deer Park. That is, declaring, teaching, disclosing, describing, revealing, expounding, clarifying the Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of dissatisfaction, of the origin of dissatisfaction, of the cessation of dissatisfaction, of the practice leading to the cessation of dissatisfaction. Now we're going to come into the details. What is the noble truth of dissatisfaction? Okay, birth is dissatisfaction. Aging is dissatisfaction. Dying is dissatisfaction. Of course, childbirth is painful and dangerous for the mother. But more significantly, this can refer also to rebirth and the cycle of samsara, knowing that one has been going through all the distress and difficulty of life, seeking for a way to the end of suffering. The Buddha said, many a birth I wandered in samsara, seeking but not finding the builder of this house. Sorrowful it is to be born again and again. So that's the dukkha of birth, is the sorrow of being born again and again, and not knowing how to get off of that merry-go-round of just going around and around from life to life at different levels. Then he goes on, and these are terms that it's very easy to understand. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and anguish are dissatisfaction. Not getting what one wants is dissatisfaction. Briefly, the 5 aggregates, when affected by clinging, are dissatisfaction. So the sorrow, lamentation, pain, and anguish of life are, we can, in a way, those who are advanced in our practice, who are able to withstand all kinds of difficulties, challenges, physical pain, loss, changes, impermanence. Once we have that breakthrough and able to be equanimous and undisturbed by all of those things, still need to look back and have sympathy and compassion for people who are still in the midst, who don't know the way out. So I practiced for this by gazing at pictures of families and children in the war-torn regions of the world, seeing the physical pain, seeing the sickness, seeing the distress of a young child who may expect, their entire world. You expect the world is the world, a nice little home you have with mommy and daddy and your brothers and sisters, and then to have that all blown to smithereens and to lose the relatives and to be wandering in the dust and all the difficulties and challenges, and then to have so many people die in the case of war, especially, and just the intense grief of those grieving that loss, the unexpected loss, when a young man or a young woman who's healthy and in the prime of life loses their life and the parents are left behind grieving, or when the the wife is left behind and doesn't know how she's going to manage to survive and support the children without having the man. So it's, there's a lot of anguish. This is why it's serious. We need to make the effort to discover and realize for ourselves the cause of dukkha and the possibility for the end of dukkha, and to realize and manifest that kind of dukkha can actually be escaped. Even if there's a turmoil and loss of life and disasters, a person who's realized, who knows that it's only these 5 khandhas that are being annihilated by disaster, can keep actually the bliss of enlightenment in the midst of any kind of situation. And it's our job to realize this so that we can show the world that there's a way out. He said briefly, the 5 aggregates, when affected by clinging, are dissatisfaction. I think that's going to be explained. There was one kind of dukkha that's mentioned in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, Digha Nikaya 22, that didn't get listed in the sutta. I didn't discover why it was added in Satipatthana, but it's a really wonderful type of dukkha. Wonderful. It really sheds a lot of light onto dukkha. Association with the disliked is dukkha, and separation from the liked is dukkha. This is going to be explained later on. And then the 5 aggregates are going to be explained later on. Now we come into more details. Another layer, that was the summary. Now, what is birth? Birth is the physical birth of a living being. The birth, appearance, descent, production of those beings among a group of beings, the manifestation of the aggregates, the acquisition of the sense bases. This is called birth. So if a being is conceived in the womb and then comes to birth, they acquire the body and all the aspects of mentality and the senses. Or if they're come to birth in a different kind of way, like as a deva or a being who's not born in the womb, still they have a way of coming to being. They acquire the sense basis that they have to be able to experience phenomena and have the existence of individuality temporarily for as long as that being lives. And so when the lifespan of that being is finished, then it's finished. What is dying? That's his physical death here. This is the death that's involved with the cycle of life, birth and death. Falling, shifting away, dissolution, disappearance, mortality, dying beings from a group of beings, the completion of the lifetime, the dissolution of the aggregates, laying down the body, and the severance of the life faculty. This is called death. There's another kind of theory about birth and death, which is speaking about moment by moment. Each thing that we experience arises, has its moment of existence, and then ceases. So while one is practicing in the Satipatthana, you experience the arising, the existence and the ceasing of all the phenomena that you're observing while you're practicing the Satipatthana. But in this case, in the case of dukkha, he's really focusing on the round of samsara, birth and death and rebirth. And this is important for anybody who thinks that Buddhism doesn't really need to have the idea of rebirth to be practiced, to be understood, but it's very intrinsic to the entirety of the teachings. Okay, what is sorrow? These are more or less synonyms: sorrow, sadness, sorrowfulness, melancholy, or depression. Someone who's had some kind of misfortune or who encountered some kind of unpleasant experience, like having a gang of hooligans drive you out of your house and force you to go on a forced march for hundreds of miles to a different country. That would be like a misfortune, or having your house blown up. And having to live in a tent. That's another one. Okay. What is lamentation? The grief, the lamentation, the grieving and lamenting. State of grief, state of lamentation of one who's had some kind of misfortune or has encountered that kind of experience. So then the grieving, this is like the vocalizing, the emotional expression of the grief. And this is another phase of dukkha. How that lamentation is expressed is very much affected by culture. In different people, some people will bottle it up, and other people will cry very easily or have a big display of their sorrow. But in any case, it still is part of dukkha. It's part of what's normal for a human being until they gain their wisdom. What is pain? Whatever is felt. So pain, here is the Pali word dukkha. So when you have the two words dukkha and domanassa, dukkha means physical pain, domanassa means mental or psychological pain. So pain is what's felt as physical pain, physically unpleasant, pain that arises from physical contact. That's called pain. And so that's part of dukkha. What is dejection? That's domanassa. That's whatever is felt as mental pain, mentally unpleasant. Pain and unpleasant that arises from mental contact. That's called dejection. What is misery? That misery, anguish, state of misery, anguish of one who's had a misfortune, encountered some kind of unpleasant experience. So that's an extreme form of pain and dejection is this misery. Okay. What is meant by associating with the disliked? There are these sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and ideas which are unlikable, undesirable, and disagreeable. And there are those who want to harm, injure, disturb, and threaten you. The coming together with these, the joining, inclusion, and mixing with them, this is called association with the disliked is suffering. We say, asevana chabalanam panditanam chusevana. This is a blessing supreme to associate with the wise and not to associate with fools. A fool is a childish person with no wisdom. And if you were a little child and your parents are fools, it could lead to a very difficult childhood for you. Or if you're an employee and your boss is a fool, it can be really painful for you. Or if you're a member of one group and there's another group around who hates you and wants to destroy you and get rid of you because of your race, creed, color, or gender, or any other aspects, and the people are scapegoating you and using you in that way. That is this kind of suffering, as well as the more subtler life form of having to take something, take a contact, an experience which is just unpleasant. And then the other one, what is meant by separation from the like is suffering. There are sights, sounds, smell, taste, and touches, and ideas that are likable, desirable, agreeable. And there are those who want to help, benefit, comfort, and protect you. Mother, father, brother, sister, friends, and colleagues, relatives, and kin. The division from these, the disconnection, segregation, and parting from them. This is called separation from the light is suffering. It's a very meaningful and at a kind of a, well, I'll finish this thing and I'll talk about then some ways to work with it in a preliminary way. Not getting what one wants is dissatisfaction. There's a kind of trivial example, like the child wants a toy and they can't have it. Mommy says no, or daddy says no, and the child has a bit of a temper about not getting what they want. But this is a little bit more serious, and this is about when we see this whole package of dukkha and we want to escape from it, but we don't yet know how. This kind of being of wish arises in beings who are subject to birth. Oh, may we not be subject to birth. May birth not come to us. But that wish is not attainable. This is called not getting what one wants, is dissatisfaction. And then a person who's subject to aging, illness, dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, anguish, and so on, all of the list. We wish, oh, may we not be subject to these. May they not come to us. But it's not attainable. Until you find out how, it's not attainable. There's a comment here that metta, mudita, karuna, and equanimity help through the suffering if we meditate on them. Yes, indeed, that's true. And it's also true that the intentional practice of patience, especially if it's combined with confidence in this path of teaching, that if you experience these kinds of pain and you don't yet know how to get out of it, so then you're in the realm of the first noble truth. The Buddha said that dukkha should be fully understood. Back at the Saccavibhaṅgasutta, he said that. So if you experience pain and you don't yet know how to get out of it, your job is to investigate, study, look for the causation of it. Look for what factors are sustaining it. Work with the Dhamma Teachings until you can find some aspect of the Dhamma which does enable you to release that. And it can also be even that having the presence of a good friend or simply the passage of time can allow some kinds of pain to be released. That pain itself is temporary and it has its lifespan. So when you're watching, you see that even dukkha is impermanent. It comes and goes, comes and goes. Now, in brief, the 5 aggregates, when affected by clinging or dissatisfaction, and it is these. The physical form aggregate, when affected by clinging. In this case, I'm not thinking of like the earth element and water element, rather this living body. And both the attachment to your own body, how much trouble you take to keep the body healthy, how concerned and anxious you might feel if an injury comes to the body, and how even it's possible for somebody who's unwise to develop an obsession about the health and beauty of their physical form, and it could become almost like an addiction, so that they're going to so much trouble trying to take care of the body. And if they don't get some perspective on it, they can be very hurt indeed when the body gets old and when the body is injured, when the body dies. Then the other ones are aspects of mentality. The feeling aggregate, that's Vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. The phenomenon we experience are very often the first contact that we have with them is just experienced in terms of Vedana. Then recognition, which is sanya, sometimes called perception. That's when our mental faculty is able to distinguish one object from the surrounding and recognize what it is. This may be pulling up some conditioning from the underlying tendencies, that it's an object or a person that you makes you happy or one that makes you sad. The recognition or the perception is conditioned by feeling in some way. And then the thought is sankhara, often translated also as a volition. So the aggregate of volitional formations or the aggregate of mental formations. This includes both when you get a feeling and then you recognize what it is. And almost immediately when you have that recognition, you will know what to do about it. So if you have a sore throat and you feel a very hard and large-sized lump around your lymph nodes, and then you recognize that, oh, my cancer is back, then you're going to go see the doctor right away. So when you recognize it, the volition comes up right there. So that's an aspect of what the mental formations are. But another aspect of it is like we create the kind of world we live in. So if we're filled with the tendency to aversion and hatred, we create a world of hell. And if we have an inclination to see what's beautiful, to see goodness and to see beauty, then you can create a world of heavens. But these are just formations, so they're still part of dukkha if you're clinging to them. So if you got your rose-colored glasses or your orange-colored hell glasses, whatever color your mental formations are, if you cling to it and you expect the world to stay that way, then the rug will be pulled out from you again and again, and you'll suffer. And then the consciousness aggregate, that's the knowing faculty, the vijnana, cognition. The cognition is able to know all the others, and it's able to also know them and put them together as a sort of a compound self. So this body, these feelings, these intentions, these plans, these wishes, all together becomes, this is my biographical self. And it's a real dukkha, because that kind of vijnana, which is clinging to a self, is exactly the kind of vijnana that's creating the conditions for rebirth. So in that way, that vijnana, that consciousness, is the supreme dukkha, because it's the aspect of our mentality that causes us to create the kamas, the conditions for rebirth. Another reason why I love that having vijnana included on this list is I just read something about the craving for non-existence, vibhava tanha. So vibhava is non-existing or not becoming. But it said that at death, the 5 aggregates come to vibhava tanha. Or no, the 5 aggregates come to vibhava. So the 5 aggregates come to non-existence. So not only is the body feeling, perceptions, volitional formations come to non-existence, but to consciousness, that factor, the aggregate of vijnana, also comes to non-existence. The consciousness does not jump out and fly away and get born into another body. That's not how it happens. So that's the Buddha's brief summary of dukkha. The origin of dissatisfaction is that craving, which produces further existence, is accompanied by delight and passion, and seeks delight in various ways. Tatra tatra vinandini. Literally, they seek delight here and there. So if they want to be rich, they could get reborn into a rich family. If they want to be an angel, they could get reborn as an angel. If they want to be a god, they can get reborn as a god. And that's also what the here and there is. So it's here and there, not just, seeking delight in coffee and seeking another delight in curry, but also seeking delight here and there in the different realms of birth, the different realms of existence. Welcome, Tanli, and welcome, Prada Kukuri Sudas. And I mentioned Greta Chintan already. So this is the cause of dukkha. Craving. The origin of dissatisfaction is that craving. And specifically, craving for existence, craving for avoiding existence. Craving for sensuality, craving for existence, craving for avoiding existence. So kama tanha, that's craving for the stimulation and pleasant experiences with the senses, including the mind's desire for entertainment, as well as the body's desire for pleasant tastes and touches. The craving for existence, bhava tanha, is particularly can be associated with the desire to get out of the kama realm and to get into the heavenly realm. So there's the craving for sensuality, that's this ordinary world. And then those who practice the Brahma Viharas, if they don't obtain enlightenment, they could be reborn from practicing loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, and keeping their morality pure. They could be reborn in the heavenly realm. And that's, if you crave that, that's a craving for heavenly existence. And then the craving for avoiding existence is sometimes mentioned as far as like a suicidal wish, but I believe that it's more better to see it in the context of the different schools of thought that were around the time of the Buddha who saw the pain of the cycle of samsara, the cycle of being reborn again and again. So the ascetics and the seers, they recognize this pain. They recognize the pain of being reborn according to your karma, and so it's like to be born is a kind of a punishment because you got some bad karma, therefore you got born again, and you have to go through another everything that's involved with life all over again. And so they had the desire to get out of it, and they thought that by practicing the immaterial meditations on infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, or neither perception nor non-perception, they could get reborn into a corresponding realm of existence. And there was an idea that they could become merged with Brahma, merged with the divinity, and that their individual existence would disappear. So they believe that they have a self, and they're sick and tired of being born again and again. They want to get rid of the self by merging with Brahma, or merging with God, or merging with the divine, or merging with heaven. Or alternatively, it could be visualized as coming to a state of existence where there's no more birth and death, no more cycle of samsara, coming to something which is permanent. But this is distinguished from the teachings of the Buddha, because the Buddha says that self of yours didn't exist in the first place. It was just a delusion. And so instead of saying, I will come to be annihilated or disappeared, or I will not be in the future. Instead, the Buddha suggests a different contemplation, which is, it will not be in the future. So the five aggregates will not be in the future. So we can contemplate impermanence, but we're not thinking about getting out of our problems by causing ourselves to become merged with the divine. Now, here's another set that I've taken from the Digha Nikaya, and it's about the cause of dukkha. Where does that craving arise? Where does it settle? Whatever in the world seems nice and pleasant, it is there that craving arises and settles. And what in the world seems nice and pleasant? The I in the world seems nice and pleasant. It is there that craving arises and settles. Then the other senses, eros, tongue, body, mind. And then all the different ways that you can process and go around and around in your mind with those touches of the senses, of the sense faculties. Sight, sound, smells, taste, touches, and ideas are nice and pleasant. It's there that craving arises and settles. The sense consciousness, the knowing faculty, is nice and pleasant. It's there that the craving arises and settles. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the consciousness is pleasant. The contact, that's when, if you're practicing meditation, you can sometimes have your vipassana is so sharpened so that you can see that the eye, the visible object, and the knowing faculty come together, and there's just a moment, the contact. That's when the sense experience arises. Oh, so pleasant, nice and pleasant in the world. Their craving arises. The feeling born of that sense contact, that's where it arises. The perception of sight, sound, smells, etc. Nice and pleasant, that's where craving arises. The intention, that's the volitional formations. And craving itself is nice and pleasant in the world. We love to crave if we're not wise. And that's where the craving arises and settles. And then subsequently, in the Digha Nikaya version, it shows that each one of those, that long list of different parts of the phenomena that we experience is dear and pleasant in the world. And when the craving does not arise, then the suffering, it doesn't settle. So where you wake up and where you were unawoken, where you were suffering, your ordinary experiences that you had before you had any wisdom at all is exactly the same place that you're going to wake up. You don't have to go to heaven to wake up. You don't have to even necessarily go to a monastery to wake up, or to go to a special college or get a vacation or retire from your job. That everything that you're experiencing right now, that exactly with that, exactly at that moment, you can put down the craving. You can put it down, and then you can wake up right there. Just like the lady I was talking about at the beginning, who had the resentment, and she realized, oh, I don't have to keep it. I can put it down right there. So that's about the arising of the cause of dukkha. Then we come to the cessation of dukkha. What is the noble truth of the cessation of dissatisfaction? It is the remainderless fading away, cessation, giving up, relinquishment, and release of that craving without any further attachment to it. This is called the noble truth of the cessation of dissatisfaction. So this is the final goal. This is when you get home, when you're an arahant. The remainderless, the fading away of the craving. It gets more and more dispersed and weaker until it disappears completely. You've given it up. You've relinquished it. You don't want to pick it up again. You've released it. If you had any kind of attachment to it, if you assumed that whatever circumstance you're in, this is the ground and you're going to put your stake there and make this your place, then you still have some attachment. But at the end, all of it is released without any further attachment. This is the cessation of dissatisfaction, the cessation of dukkha. Whatever in the world seems nice and pleasant, it's there. That craving is given up and ceases. What in the world seems nice and pleasant? The I in the world seems nice and pleasant. It is there. That craving is given up and ceases. So, and so on for all of those categories. Every moment is the opportunity to release like that. And then finally, the practice which leads to the cessation of dukkha. Oops. It is this Noble Eightfold Path. Appropriate perspective, sometimes called right view, appropriate intention, appropriate speech, appropriate conduct, appropriate livelihood, appropriate effort, appropriate mindfulness, appropriate concentration. So this is our practice. Before you wake up, when you first get a glimmer of hope with this practice, when you first get a measure of confidence with this practice, you can start right away with this Eightfold Noble Path. If you are fortunate to come to realize the stream entry, then you can start again and go over it all over again. So what is this right view, this appropriate perspective? Knowing about the dissatisfaction, knowing about the origin of dissatisfaction, knowing about the cessation of dissatisfaction, and knowing the practice which leads to the cessation of dissatisfaction. So dukkha, the cause of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. Now, I know that for a lot of students, it can happen that you can understand dukkha and you can come to be patient with dukkha. You can come to understand how craving causes dukkha to grow. You can begin to learn how to release some of that craving, and the dukkha starts to become reduced. But the cessation of dukkha may not be something that's easy to see for somebody who's an ordinary person who's not practiced and not realized the stream entry. When you can see and know absolutely for certain, for positive, without a doubt, that this complete cessation of dukkha is possible for a human being to achieve, that it's a real thing, even if you've not yet fully achieved it. That's a very important turning point. And if this is something that's only theoretically true for you, then just keep practicing. And the time will come that that will open up, and you will have that experiential confidence in knowing that this complete cessation of dukkha is a real thing that can be realized by a human being. And then your practice will go ahead at a different kind of level. Appropriate intention. Some people translate this as right thought. Or I think intention is actually a little bit more clear. It is the intention of renunciation. In Pali, that's called nekkhamma, and that's intending to let go of sensual craving. it sometimes is referring to undertaking the celibate lifestyle of a monastic who's cut back many different kinds of distractions, of different kinds of entertainments and so forth. But also it just simply means letting go of the clinging and craving and obsessing around sense contact. So whatever, you can't stop what's dear and delightful. You saw in the last section that we read from the Digha Nikaya, the eye is dear and delightful. It's interesting, isn't it, how we started with lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, weeping and wailing, death, all the terrible things at the beginning had to be like faced and confronted and then come out of denial. But somehow when we get through our denial and are like with a lot of compassion, fully able to accept and see the magnitude of the dukkha in the world, then behind that comes this like a little sprite or something that comes out of, I think, in Pandora's box. She opened a box and all the horrible demons came out. And then there was a little angel or a little butterfly or something that was the last little thing to come out. So after we accept and come to terms with the reality of dukkha in the world, then it can be seen in this kind of like simple way, this fundamental goodness of like to be alive, to cognize, to experience the things that we experience, to have the touching, tasting, thinking, all of the phenomena, everything that's happening, that those things are dear, they are delightful, and it's possible to experience that beauty without craving. And the determination to do that, to not crave for the sensual things, that's the nekama. And then the intention of non-aversion. So aversion, that's the dislike, that's the opposite. Aversion is very often associated with something that seems to be a danger or a threat to us, as well as being averse to physical pain. As well, when a person is not aware of impermanence and expects things to stay the same, then when things change, which they expected to stay the same, they can be extremely disgusted by the changeability of things. That can bring out aversion. So aversion is just that reaction of dislike or disgust. And then the next is the intention of non-harming. That's avihingsa. So to harm, after feeling aversion, then you could form the idea of punishing that bad thing, or punishing yourself. I was recalling a story. I used to live in Virginia, and they built a new suburb, and the deers had their forest taken away. So the deers went into the people's yards and chewed on the foliage and the landscaping. At first, the people who lived there thought it was so darling and delightful and beautiful to see those lovely deers. And then they saw their expensive landscaping being damaged, and a certain faction of people wanted to kill the deer. They wanted to cull them to reduce their numbers. And before they could kill them, they needed to hate them first. So they put out a propaganda series that the deer are unclean, like rodents. They carry disease. So instead of being these darling, delightful things, they become like a disease vector. And they try to hate them first, and after they hate them, then they can kill them. So the hating is abhyapada, and then the killing is the avihingsa. So when you see somebody who's really got it as far as the promise of this path, you will see that they won't hurt anybody or anything. This is one of the easiest ways to recognize somebody who's really on the right track with this path of practice. Okay. What is right speech? Refraining from false statements, refraining from malicious speech, refraining from harsh speech, and refraining from useless prattle. This is called appropriate speech. What is right conduct? Refraining from killing living beings, refraining from theft, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is appropriate conduct. And right livelihood. A noble disciple abandons inappropriate livelihood, make their living by means of appropriate livelihood. This is called appropriate livelihood. These first steps are the precondition for success in meditation. If you don't have appropriate livelihood and right sila and good speech, there will be so much disturbance in the mind. It will be very difficult to put away the hindrances and afflictions that run around in the mind when we try to meditate. Now, coming into meditation, what is right effort? Here, a monk makes effort, produces interest, makes an effort, arouses energy, directs the mind, and strives. And they have 4 right efforts. One is for the harmful states of mind that have not yet arisen to not arise. So you've got to pay attention to what's not there and understand what is the steps that support, that provide the boundary, the barrier of protection for the non-arising of those toxic, those harmful states. Then, if a state does arise, for the abandoning of the harmful, unwholesome states that are already arisen. But that's only half the equation. Then you also must find out how to bring about the arising of the wholesome mind states that have not yet arisen. Don't just wait to be kind once in a while just by accident. You're not really trying, but once in a while a kind thought comes along and then you do something nice. Instead, you want to intentionally be able to bring up the wholesome states and practice it until you can do so whenever you choose to. And then the last one is when the wholesome state has arisen, for the stability, persistence, growth, abundance, development, and perfection of those wholesome mind states already arisen. This is right effort. Right mindfulness. There's 4 subjects of mindfulness: the body, feelings, the state of mind, and the Dhammas. These are contemplated in a special way. This is one of the quality of mindfulness. If you're practicing right mindfulness, it is that there is an ardency, sincerity, and energy involved. There is clear comprehension. There is mindfulness, which is looking within with a clear awareness in a way that makes the experiences memorable. Being able to remember, like remembering to be aware, not just zoning out, and having removed desire and dejection about the world. So if you wanted, somebody asked you, what is mindfulness? If you remember not only the 4 objects of mindfulness, but these adverbs about how to practice mindfulness. Then comes to right concentration. Okay. Somebody was asking about this the other day. They mentioned that they watch the breath and then a lot of thoughts come into mind, and then they try to watch the breath and then a lot of thoughts come into mind, and they try to watch the breath, a lot of thoughts come into mind, and they want to know when the thinking will stop. But that person has not learned about what the nature is of meditation, of samma samadhi, or right concentration. This is the jhana practice, which starts with being separated from the unwholesome states of mind. So all of that work they did before with the right effort was learning to have some mastery, so that then from time to time, when you choose in a quiet environment, perhaps in any environment, but at least in an environment that's peaceful and quiet, one would be able to set aside all those unwholesome states and obtain the first jhana, which has thought and investigation, rapture, happiness, and seclusion. That's seclusion from the unwholesome states. So it's the happiness that when you realize that the negative mind states have gone to sleep, then when the thought and investigation becomes too much work and the mind just naturally wants to set them down, and that becomes quiet, and then the thought stops. That's what the gentleman was asking for. And this state has internal tranquility, unification of the mind, free from thought and investigation, and it has the rapture and happiness born from concentration. Then eventually this happiness, this rapture, this bliss is too much trouble. It's too much agitation, it's too tiresome, and the mind just is desiring peace. Then with the fading away of rapture, you obtain the third jhana, which is very equanimous, mindful, clearly comprehending, and experiencing the body of pleasure. I know that the Abhidhamma has got a different interpretation of that, which is that when you have a factor of happiness, the sukha of meditation If it's just the one factor all by itself, it's called sukha. And then if it comes to be that all of the different faculties of the mind, like the feeling, perception, volition, thoughts, contact, all the different faculties of the mind are all pervaded by that happiness, then that's what the Abhidhamma calls the body of happiness. So it would be like if you're making bread and then you put baking powder and sugar and flour and mix it with the water. Those things change because of them being mixed together. So the body of happiness is like when the whole entire phenomenon that you're able to experience right there is pervaded by that happiness. So that's one way of explaining that. Then even that happiness is too much agitation, too much trouble. The mind is tired of it and wants more peace. Then comes the abandoning of pleasure and pain, previous disappearance of joy and grief. That's the physical pleasure pain goes, the mental pleasure pain goes. You have this fourth jhana, which is neither painful nor pleasant, completely pure, composed of equanimity and mindfulness. This is right concentration. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of dissatisfaction. And then he repeats the whole refrain about this is the unsurpassed wheel, cannot be turned back. And satisfied, the monks delighted in Venerable Sariputta's speech. I talked for a long time, but I didn't see a lot of questions coming into the comments. So that's why I didn't stop. And I feel that there's some use if somebody wanted to have, if they didn't want to read a summary of all the sutta, but wanted to simply listen to it, you can listen to this recording. I welcome any comments or questions. Now there's just a couple of minutes left to the end of our time. But if there's one question, I'll answer it. I'll come back to this one question or comment that from Chintana about the Brahmaviharas will help us through suffering if we meditate on them. Yes, those are wholesome states. So this is part of the right effort. So if the four Brahmaviharas are not present and you're able to arouse them, they can, partially they can just block out the obsession with the negative or the painful experiences. And it's also true that if these practices are practiced as in the form of the boundless meditation, if one is able to get into that boundless meditation state, then a lot of painful things can they don't find a purchase because the mind space is so large, and any little troubles are just like floating in the space. They don't have anything to grip onto. They're not able to lash hold, to take over the mind and to obsess the mind. So there's that advantage. Having gone so far, I shall close by Again, giving respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namasami Subhatipanno Bhagavato Savakasamno Sangham Namami. Thank you, everybody, for your patient listening tonight.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.